What unifies the work is this idea of barriers between the viewer and the subject, and that the glass works are about an exclusion from an impossible space, an invented impossible space, and the climbing works somehow are about the physical barriers of the object and moving through a city or making lines across the landscape and travel in that way. The work case study, which is sort of the work that kind of we've tried to hinge the show around, I made it before I'd been to look at the case study houses. I was very interested in this idea that in order to have a modernist, perfect modernist building with full plate glass and all that, in order to make sure that you have privacy, you had to own such a large bit of property around you. And I wanted to make work that was very much about its siting, that it was about the place of the thing. And as a physical object, it needed to follow I wanted it to follow some of the form of the other work in order for it to work as a sculpture. So, and originally it was going to be built against the wall, I think, and it would be appearing out of the space. But I think I got very into this idea of it as how that would work as a slice through this building, and I don't know, just the materiality of what that would be like from behind. And so, and in some ways, the back of it is my favourite bit. The sheer slice through it. I've made a few of these installations in different galleries. There's an idea that in the making of it, that the space, that the impossible space that I'm building that is beyond the wall is about an extension of the space that you're in. So it hopefully it references the architecture of the building we're in, and it is this progression. Again, you're held back from entering it. And the way all of these works behind glass work they force you to move around in order to animate the work, and they don't photograph very well because it's an experience of moving around a sculpture really. And I think though all of the work in the show uses photography, it's very much, sculpture is the thing that it is, I think, and it's how you're meant to approach the work. The case study program was initiated by John Intenza, and he was the editor of Arts and Architecture magazine in California, and it was for 1945 to 62, and he commissioned these architects. The original ones were, I think Neutra made the first one. After that was Eames and Koenig, and anyway. But when I went to live in Los Angeles, it was really because of these houses that I went. I got the architectural guide to Los Angeles and really dedicated myself to just looking at these houses. But it was incredibly frustrating because the guy who wrote it had amazing access, and also when he wrote it, you could get into any of these buildings. You could see them from the street because they'd only just been built. But when I got there were fences and they're all privacy, and the whole privacy issue was a really big thing in the States, and security. And so I started creeping through, hopping over fences and creeping through bushes in order to take these kind of photos off the edge of the property. And it really was a shortish hop from that in order to just starting to climb on the buildings, and this idea of the transgression of it, and of somehow becoming more intimate with these buildings than just looking at them in the book. St. Peter's Seminary at Cardross, the attraction absolutely was it as a modernist ruin, and the way, I don't know, where it sits in this next to a golf course in this quite sort of retirement-y area I think the way the local people used it to me is really fascinating, and everyone who stepped through the hole in the fence is already in some way transgressing to be there. And I think the way the different uses of it fitted very well with the way I was interested in occupying it, and that when there were loads of people there all the time, and that was very fascinating. That there are local smokers there and architectural tours and all sorts of people. Whilst over the 2 or 3 days that I spent there'll be people coming in all the time. But I think for me its attraction is as a decaying ruin, and I think that some of the sort of tenets of modernism, the use of render and stuff like that. In a building like this, it's, you know, that render's really, it's a brick-built building that has then been rendered, and so all that stuff is falling, all the render's falling off, and it's the layering of its fabrication is also very interesting, I think. And the you know, the climbing there was, I don't know, yes, again, it was very interesting, you know, the understanding the materials of it, and it's already somehow, the rhythm of the building is very, I don't know, it seemed very perfect to me to travel across it and around it. It was, you know, it is monumental in its size and everything. The climbing of the buildings is not a kind of parkour thing or an extreme climbing thing. It's not part of it. I'm not a particularly good climber. It's really to do with the experience of the architecture itself. And that that Noam seemed to sum up very well for me, that idea of the absurdity of it and the intimacy in the relationship with the building. And that it is, you know, there's a slight lovemaking thing going on as well as being splattered against it. You know, you look like you've been shot out of a cannon and splattered against it. And I liked some of that absurdity that worked with it. So, and it seemed to hit the right tone that could make, you know, without being too comic, and it still being about the structure and this was a traverse, a route around, and it was really about you know, getting to know this building and this group of buildings. The structure then for the way that this gallery is hung was to do with kind of a deeper investigation into the St. Peter's Seminary at Cardross and the distillery where there was multiple works, and it worked, you know, thinking of it like a climbing guide where there's multiple routes and that, and then the other works are more, you know, single routes on buildings that had particularly caught my eye and become part of the tour that I made. Just trying to work out how you might make a connection between one and another, and in some very basic version, this thing of drawing a line around this tour. And you know, I think it comes back to, you know, some of the earliest books I had as a teenager of, you know, landscape and stuff. Even the walks where they're represented with the line through the white line that shows the route through the landscape. And I've always really loved that idea of the line and landscape. The way it works as a surface issue, the way the line sits on the surface of the photograph and the thing is behind, it somehow chimes in with all the work, which is either making the two dimensions of the photograph into 3 dimensions, which the glass work does, or denying that, which the facade is trying to do. The models that are embedded into the photographs, prior to that, I'd always put the photographs into the sculpture, and I thought I would switch this around and make these little sculptures and embed them into the photo. But there is you know, they are only as well made as they need to be to carry off the illusion. When I started making those, I thought I would make them all these idealized dwellings. Like the first one I made was the sort of Bond retreat into the mountains, and I thought they would all be like this. But very quickly, in a way that because each one took so long to make, took about a month on each one, I built up a real narrative with the place. And I print up the photographs and leave them sitting around the studio for you know, a month for each one. And during that thing, it would be about trying to work out what is the architecture that would be within this landscape. And nearly always it would steer itself towards this kind of failed, this failed attempt to occupy it. My original idea was to clad the whole building in banner material that you put over buildings when they're being developed, and on top of that, so to turn the whole building into a sculpture, and to make it somehow like the pages from this book, from a book, to have the routes and the descriptions on it. But I think during the investigation of how that might work, it became very clear that as a sculpture, as a physical object, it would work much better as a billboard or like a Western town facade, you know, proper facade. And so it's denying the possibility of climbing it for a start, because it's made it back into just the surface. And I think it's playing with this relationship of the two-dimensionality versus the building itself. And I really have particularly enjoyed actually in the end, the closest thing I've come to making a building. I think it's really transformed how the building works.